Hey, what's up, guys?
Are you sober yet from Monday night?
It was great. Yes. The answer is yes, I am. It was a long night. I only stayed out till about 2. So I feel like I kind of kept myself under relative control. It's hard this time of year, for me to really go nuts. But it was incredible. Yeah. I mean, it's the third time, for me, seeing my school win the national championship, and definitely doesn't get old.
I just wanted to just get the feeling, just watching the ebb and flow of that game. Notre Dame put up a fight toward the end, but I mean, where is this place for you as far as championships? You lost to Michigan, but yet won the national championship. How's that feel?
Well, I don't think I don't know. I mean, it's hard to compare anything to the first one because it hadn't happened before. It hadn't happened in such a long time, and to beat that Miami team was just ridiculous. No one thought we were going to win that game. And if it's hard for people out there to imagine Ohio State as an underdog, I mean, you guys can remember that one, right? Like, the Ohio State was a legitimate underdog in that game.
Yeah.
So that was like a little different, a little more out of nowhere. The 14 championship was sort of like this one, and that, like, the team caught fire at the right time and just blew through everybody. So I don't know how I'd rank them. I guess they're like your kids, right? Like, you love all of them equally in different ways.
In terms of getting onto the Ben Johnson hiring, the Bears, we were just talking about the Bears moved like with lightning speed. We're wondering if Saturday night, when it got to, it's 45-28 in the second half, we better call Eddie George. We haven't met the Rooney Rule. Do you think that's how that all went down?
It's a good question. I hadn't thought about that. No, I mean, I think like, I the way I look at it, and the way all this went down, I got a story going up on it on the website here in a minute, but I know I could take you guys through the timeline of it that, on Saturday night, they obviously lose the game. And then, Ben takes a lot of Sunday to dig out from underneath that. Like, everybody who knows the way these jobs work, like, there's exit interviews and all this different stuff that you got to do with your players. So, I think out of respect to the Lions, he wanted to take the day to deal with a lot of that. Then Sunday night, he huddles with his agent, and they debrief a little bit more. They hadn't finished doing that on the Raiders and the Jaguars, and of course the Bears. They talk again on Monday morning, and then it was actually Monday afternoon that Ben informed his agent, Rick Smith, who's a Chicago guy, to go get the deal done with the Bears. So I think, like, I don't know that, like, there was anything on the Bears' part to say, okay, like, we have to get buttoned up. That said, I do think there was some level of urgency to go and try and close on Ben Johnson. And the more I've learned about it over the last few days, I think that the interview process for Ben and the Bears went really, really well, just as far as checking the boxes that needed to be checked, and finding alignment between Poles and Johnson, and getting comfortable with ownership, because for Ben, like, a lot of it was, we're all going to make a big deal of the quarterback, and rightfully so. But I think for Ben, a lot of it was just, how do I get into a spot that's going to be a little bit like Detroit? Like, even the fact that it's in the Midwest, I think his family really likes the region of the country, and likes the people in the Midwest. So that was a plus. But I think what they had in Detroit with Sheila Ford as the owner, and with Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell working together, that was what he was looking for. And I think over the course of the interview process, he was able to find that with the Bears.
Yeah, what Kap and I have been talking about regarding the process is that, again, the Bears usually don't spend this kind of money on a coach, let alone a coaching staff. And so that's why I think it's sent shockwaves everywhere. How much did it surprise you that the Bears got this done so quickly after the loss that the Lions endured?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to give credit. To George McCaskey and Kevin Warren here. I'll be the first one to tell you, over the last 2 years, There's been a lot of skepticism over Kevin Warren's presence in the organization, what it means. Is it going to scare some coaching candidates away, which I think to some degree it did. But I think through the process with those who actually went through it and dealt with Kevin and dealt with George, they saw, Kevin as somebody who's like, instead of just trying to take over the football operation, which I think there's a perception out there with a lot of people in the league, that's what he was trying to do. He was actually more of a resource to Ryan Poles. And then I think with George, there was an ability to understand where mistakes had been made and a willingness to fix them, which is something I brought up with you guys, as far as what Ben was looking for. A willingness to set things up a different way. And, there's even been, certain ways that they've evolved the organization over the last couple of years where it looks a little bit differently than it did when they last had an opening in 2022. So to me, I think that was really the big part of it, was what does this look like with George McCaskey as the owner and Kevin Warren as the team president before you even get to Ryan Poles in the personnel department.
In terms of Hank Fraley, there's a lot of smoke that he'll be coming to the Bears, but I know he's in Seattle interviewing for that OC job. He would not be the play caller here because Ben will be. Any chance the Bears get him? Because he's a great O-line coach.
Yeah, he's a great O-line coach, no question. There would be a way to get a guy like that out of Detroit. I personally think so. I think it's an interesting dynamic because I don't think that Ben wants to to go in and raid Dan Campbell's staff. I think it's a lot that he's going in division. I know that weighed on him a little bit. Now he's going to go compete against Dan Campbell twice a year. Because he's got so much respect for Dan, and I think part of it is you want to be really respectful to the place that you came from. And part of that too is not rating the staff. Now that said, I think Hank Fraley has a really good shot in Seattle, potentially being paired with a pass game coordinator. And so if it gets to a point where it's Detroit's going to lose him anyway, then I could see maybe, the Bears throwing their hat in the ring. So Fraley is well thought of, well respected, all of that. And he's done a great job with offensive linemen. And look, that's one of the most important things you can have on any coaching staff is somebody who can work with the offensive line group. And so, getting somebody like Hank Fraley is going to be huge for whoever it happens for. And, the Lions, if you look at it, are going to have a lot of work to do just as far as replacing all the people they're about to lose.
Johnson saw a guy in Poles who was exceptionally smart and had made plenty of mistakes, as most folks do in a new job over his first 3 years, and as such, knew what not to do going forward. The first part of Johnson's Chicago interview, one-on-one with Poles, and Poles was sincere with Johnson about his early missteps and his desire to have a coach with strong convictions and go find the right players for that coach. Really interesting stuff here. So how much did you hear about, first of all, you talk about them meeting on the Zoom just with George and Kevin, and George being willing to fall on his sword and say, hey, I made mistakes. Same with Ryan. So it sounds like Ben got everything he wanted.
Yeah, I would say that's fair. Yeah, I mean, I think he did and I don't think it's about power either. That can be, I think, overblown sometimes. I think as much as anything else, it's and I think you go back to Detroit and you see what they've done so well in Detroit. And I think it's, an understanding from Brad Holmes and their personnel department of what exactly Dan Campbell is looking for in football players and what profiles they have for every position. And there's a reason why all of that fits together the way it does, because that's all working in concert. You know what I mean? And so, do you want to go to a place where the personnel department is shoving player profiles down your throat and saying nowhere works that way? You know what I mean? It doesn't. If you're going to try, if that's going to happen, in most cases, you're doomed to fail. If you're handing coaches players that they're lukewarm on or have questions on or whatever. I think what Ben observed in Detroit was, again, a personnel department that was really essentially working for the coaching staff. Doesn't mean like they're reporting to him with the ultimate authority of the coaching staff, but they're really working for the coaching staff, and to get the coaching staff the team that it envisions having. And so, I think that's a huge part of it for Ben is, okay, like, now what is this going to look like? And I know what I want in different players at different positions, offense and defense. Obviously he's going to have, a heavy hand over what the offense is going to look like. Who does he bring in to run the defense? Well, it's Dennis Allen, who was, whose defense is the basis for what Aaron Glenn built in Detroit, right? Because Aaron Glenn was working for DA in New Orleans. So, I think what you're going to see is a head coach coming in with a very clear vision for what he wants culturally, for what he wants, what he wants from a player profile standpoint, how he wants each position to look and feel. And they'll be very, very clear about that with Ryan Poles and the scouts, and then it's going to be on those guys to go and fill those spots as best they can, And again, I think having a place that works that way was a big priority for Ben.
Albert, out of all the jobs that are available now for head coaches, what is the steepest hole for a new head coach? Which city?
I mean, Vegas maybe, right? Like, because you're dealing with like an ownership group in flux. Now, I think Brady's going to have an influence there. He won't be there day to day, but he's going to have an influence there. But they got a long way to go, man. And Huddy, some coaches, some GMs will look at that as a positive because, you can look at it one of two ways. Are you jumping on a moving train, or are you getting a blank slate to sort of start over? And we mentioned Detroit. Like, Detroit was sort of a blank slate when those guys went in. They had the trade chip of Stafford, not a ton else. You had a couple of, really good offensive linemen in Taylor Decker and Frank Ragnow. But really, for the most part, the rest of the roster has been completely turned over. And having that sort of situation is going to appeal to a lot, to certain general manager camps and certain head coaching camps. So it is the steepest hole to dig out of. But, I think it also does give you an opportunity to build in your own image. I mean, you guys look at that Raiders roster. How many guys do they have there where you say, yeah, there's no question that guy should be there 3 years from now? I mean, it's Max Crosby, Brock Bowers, anyone else?
No,
Colt Miller, maybe. He's a little older at left tackle, but there aren't a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Albert, as we let you go, it's a great day for Bears fans. They're going to hear the press conference exclusively here on ESPN 1000 at 11. And then what's the next task? Is it getting Dennis Allen, Darren Rizzi, Hank Fraley? What's the next real task on their list?
The next real task, I say, would be, getting Dennis Allen in, getting Darren Rizzi in. And Rizzi's, I'm going to tell you guys, could be a really important piece of that staff. He's been, and they know each other from Miami, but Riz is a really, really, really strong personality who I think would be a huge get if they can get him and persuade him not to go to Denver, assuming he doesn't get the Saints job, but persuade him not to go to Denver with Sean Payton. So I think those two will be the first two. And then you fill out the offensive staff with guys that you think can help you realize your vision. And then I think after that, it's really kind of about sitting down with Ryan Poles and the scouts and schooling them on exactly what you're looking for in every position. And it'll be interesting to see whether or not they, I guess one way or the other, but will those guys, be making the trip to Mobile next week for the Senior Bowl? Maybe an opportunity for them to go and look at players. I think all of that stuff's going to be pretty interesting too.
As always, Albert. Yep.
Have a great day, man. We appreciate your time. Thanks for fitting us in.